Right then, Matt. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the below the line flow and then the below the line before start checklist. So we're going to go to the overhead panel again. And the first thing we're going to do is going to put the position light on, because the next things we do to the aeroplane could kill somebody. So we're going to put the anti-collision light to on.
Yeah.
Put all of your fuel pumps on.
Yeah.
So that's the wing pumps forward and aft, and all the lights should go out.
Yeah.
Okay, we're starting the aeroplane on a remote stand. We don't need to be pushed back, so we can pressurise all of the hydraulics. So at this point, you talk to the man on the ground and say, we're clear to pressurise. Yes, we are. So we shall pressurise the hydraulics completely and look at your lower system DU, and you should see that hydraulic A and B are now fully pressurised. I've got about 2,900 psi in A and 2,800 in B. Push the engine switch and put that display back to the engine.
Yep.
Okay, the next thing you do is you're going to turn both the air conditioning packs off.
Okay.
Duct pressure reduces a little bit. So we're now ready to start the engines on the aeroplane. But before we do that, we'll do the before start checklist.
Gotcha.
Below the line hydraulic A pumps.
On.
Yep, as required on air conditioning packs.
Off.
Anti-collision light.
On.
And the parking brake.
Set as required.
Is set to park. Okay, engine start then. Hasn't got auto start, and we need to manually monitor a number of things. What we basically need to monitor is that, firstly, the oil pressure rises, and that if the EGT rises beyond set limits, that we're in a position to close the fuel control cut-off switch, take the fuel away from the engine, and ensure that the engine can be shut down. So while we're doing this, there should be no other activity in the aeroplane. Sometimes it's happening as you're being pushed back. Sometimes it happens like we are today on stand, but there should be no other activity. And really, both pilots should be paying attention and pressing buttons and pulling levers, and their entire concentration should be on the upper and lower engine display units. So it's pretty straightforward, really. We're going to start the engines, and we're going to start as you look at it, the right-hand engine, number 2, and then we're going to start number 1 engine. Okay, so we'll start an engine, and the first thing we'll do is we'll position engine number 2 start switch into the ground position.
Yep.
And you'll see that as soon as you do that, the N2 starts to increase, because bleed air's been blown through the N2 fan, and as it does that, it will start the N1 fan to rotate as well. Look at the oil pressure, and you see that starting to increase on cold days when the oil and the engine's cold. That will take some time. When you get to 25% N1, throw the start switch to the idle position, and within 10 seconds you should see a rise in EGT with fuel flow. It's important that you keep your finger on that engine fuel control cut-off switch, and you'll see on the EGT indicator that you see a small red flick that's about a quarter of the way around that dial from the far limit.
Yeah.
There's a little red mark. That's the exceedance line. The exhaust gas temperature shouldn't go beyond that, and you can see that the EGT will peak, and then you'll hear the starter cut out, and that the two lights, the start and lower, the start valve and the oil pressure light, will extinguish. The engine's not stable until the little red EGT exceedance indicator goes out on that EGT dial.
Well,
so once that's gone out, that engine is now stable, and someone can monitor it. So we can now start engine 1. So once again, put the start switch to ground, and you're looking for an increase in N2 and an increase in oil pressure, and you should also see the N1 start to rotate. And once again, we're looking for about 25% N1, and when we get that, we can flip the fuel control switch. In the real world, one pilot will probably start his stopwatch once the starter switch is turned, and the other watch will be started when the fuel control cut-off switch is put to the idle position, so that there's verifications of time. It's a little bit difficult for us to do that and concentrate on what's going on. My EGT for that engine is just peaking now. The oil pressure is rising, and look at the oil pressure on the number 1 engine as well now. The temperature is heating up, the oil pressure is at about 30. Okay, so my engine is now stable, and just out of interest, on a standard day, look at that, we've got an ISA today, it's 15 degrees, we're at sea level. You're looking for about 20% N1, about 59 to 60% N2, an EGT that's at about 410 degrees Celsius. Could be between 320 and 520, but about 400, and about 400 kilos per engine, which you can see there as well. So that's all looking good. Okay, the next thing we can do is we can do our after start flow. So it's a flow overhead. Look at the electrical panel first. You'll see the two gen bus off lights.
Yep.
Okay. Make sure you flick both of those down, and you should see the APU gen off bus light then illuminates. So you put power onto the engines.
Yep.
Okay. Place the pitot heat switches on. They're below the window heat switches. They should all go yellow. Then I'll come across the hydraulics panel. Make sure that all of those hydraulic demand pump switches are all down. Left pack on, right pack on. Isolation valve to auto. APU bleed valve to off. Let me know when you've done that.
Yep, all done.
Okay, start switches, put them onto continuous. You can put the ignition light onto both, and you can shut down the APU. And as you're doing that, select the flaps to 5. Look at the upper and lower DUs and press the system DU to display the hydraulic panel.
Yep.
And then you can conduct a flight control check. And as you're doing that, so it's fully forwards, fully to the rear, nice and slowly. Don't slap the control surfaces around. You should see a very slight rise and fall in the pressures, and normally even in an 800 on your respective side, as the flight controls raise on that side, normally look out of your window and you should be able to see the spoilers on your sides rise as those things are done. Once you've done that, press the system display and clear the lower DU. And we can now do the after start checklist. So electrical.
Generators are on.
Probe heat.
Is on.
Hydraulic A pumps.
As required. Oh, they're off. Oh wait, hang on. Sorry.
No, hydraulic A pumps are on.
On.
Air conditioning.
Packs are auto. The bleeds are on.
Isolation valve.
Auto.
The APU.
That's off as required.
Yeah, flaps.
5.
And that's 5 is a check of the a physical check of the lever and a check of the flap indicator on the upper centre, upper next to the auto brake RTO switch.
Yep.
So I've got 5 and 5, and the start levers.
Idle beat.
Beautiful. So we're at a position now where we can call for taxi, and then we can get the aeroplane moving. So we'll say we've called for taxi. So the next thing to do, put the taxi light on, and put the runway turn off lights on. And once we've done that, and we've had our signal that the aeroplane is good, and what we would probably be now looking over our left hand shoulder if we were the pilot flying, and if we had any steering pins and whatever from the ground personnel, they'd be stood there, they'd be giving us the nod and the wave, and we'd be asking for the taxi clearance, and we'd be taxiing out to the active runway, which is what we're going to do now, isn't it?
Yep.
So with that in mind then, look left and look right, just like when you're flying a Cessna. All clear, both sides.
You gonna go first or am I?
I don't mind. Do you want me to go or do you want to go?
Yeah, go on. You go first. I'll follow you.
Okay, so parking brake is off. Advance the thrust levers, push about 24-25%. Get the aeroplane moving. Okay, but just be mindful that, you know, if you're in a confined area with lots of personnel and baggage carts and things, that, you know, anything more than that may indeed cause some problems for the ground personnel. We'd have already discussed this taxi route. I'm just coming around there now. We've got a bit of power to get around the corner today. We're going to taxi up the North Link here. And once we're clear of the terminal area, we'll start our brief before takeoff flows. First thing we're going to do, before we do the checks, we're going to do a configuration check. Some of your viewers will know what it is, some of them won't. Essentially what we're doing is we're checking that the takeoff configuration horn is not going to be activated when we advance the thrust levers. Okay. What we do is we advance the thrust levers to approximately 70% momentarily, and then we pull them back to the idle stop. Those of you that have flown on real NGs before might actually hear this check being done. So make sure the engine thrust levers are up the idle, and make sure you're clear of the terminal area. Are you on the taxiway behind me yet?
No, I just got some warning lights when I put the power in.
That's okay. Don't worry. What were they? Was it on the master caution?
Left forward over wing, right forward over
Yeah,
wing.
that's a transient message, and that will probably clear itself in a minute when we do the configuration check. On the real aeroplane, there are a number of locking devices which lock the overwing emergency exit lights.
Okay.
Okay, and when they're electronically and mechanically linked to the position of the thrust levers, and once the thrust levers are advanced beyond approximately 70% when the engines go to takeoff power, what it basically does is it locks the emergency exits so that people in the back can't then open them in flight. Okay, and they've got a series of little pins that drive forwards and backwards, and sometimes they can get clogged up with dirt and dust and things like that. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to do the configuration check in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So just press your master caution. Okay, let me know when you're on this north link. And that you're taxiing along on the centre line, and then we can do the configuration check. Okay, the first thing we're going to do as part of the pre-flight or before takeoff flow is we're going to do a configuration check.
Okay.
Do that on the taxi out to the runway. What you're going to do is you're going to place the thrust levers to the idle stop, and then you're going to momentarily advance them to about 60-70%, and then you're going to reduce them to idle again. The aeroplane
So they
shouldn't
actually
speed.
go as far as that, or just?
Yep, 70%. You advance them very quickly,
Yeah. So
and then put them back again.
Yep, the warnings have gone.
There you go. And what that means is that transient light has actually extinguished. However, if you do get a warning and you can't rectify it, then you need to stop the aeroplane, set the parking brake, probably pull the QRH. Okay. And on the taxi, no more than about 15 to 20 knots in a straight line, 10 knots into turns, and let the engines warm up for at least 2 minutes. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to check the recall. Once you've done the configuration check, and then you're going to check the flaps are where they're supposed to be, and that's a check of the lever, the leading edge light, and the indicator. You're going to check the stabilizer trim. You're going to review the takeoff briefing. So that would be with the PAX, bleed speeds, the SID, the stop altitude, and the legs page. And I'm just going to stop here. And other things like cabin secure from the cabin crew and whatever. And then we're going to do the before takeoff checklist to the line. So I'm pretty ready to do that now. So I'll call it out. Before takeoff checklist. Config checked.
Yep.
Recall checked. Flight controls checked. Flaps 5 is required. It's set. Look at green light. Stabilizer trim is 5. The takeoff briefing we've reviewed. It's going to be an NDAP 2. Straight ahead to 1,000 feet. Call bug up. Autopilot A engage. Set flaps up. Retract flaps on schedule. And climb 1 at 1,500 feet. We'll maintain that to 3,000 feet. Initial clear to 4,000 feet. Cabin secure, so we're below the line now. When you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Below the line then. Flow first. Auto throttle. Switch that on.
Yep.
You should see a little green light, and you see the arm light indicate on the thrust mode of the FMA.
Yep.
Switch the transponder on.
Yeah.
Make sure it's set in your FS-in or squawk box or IVAO. Landing and strobe lights. Okay, so we're going to put the landing lights on, the strobe lights on. I'm going to turn the taxi light off, and I'm going to taxi into position now, and you should be able to position and hold on watch B go. And once I'm clear for takeoff, I'm going to set the retractable lights. I'm going to turn those on, and then I'm going to go. And as I set thrust, I'm going to set the clock on my side, and I'm going to then call out some procedures as I do them, and then you can do them as you do it as well. So below the line, start switches, continuous, MCP is set, the auto throttle's on, the transponder is TARA, the landing and strobe lights are on, and the retractable lights are on, so I'm ready to go. if you're happy.
Yeah. I'll
I'm
line
going
up
to set
behind you.
power initially to 40% N1.
Are you
I'm gonna allow it
rolling?
to stabilise, so I'm rolling.
Sure.
So I've allowed that power to stabilise, and I've then pressed the toga switch, and the throttle's now advancing. And I've got N1 heading select and toga enunciated in green on my FMA. The airspeed is building, both on my airspeed indicator and on the ground speed indicator on my navigation display. I'm through 80 knots. The throttles are now in hold mode. I can adjust them if I want to. We're in the high speed abort regime through 100 knots. Throttle hold has been enunciated. We're approaching V1. Hands off the throttles. Rotate 2 to 3 degrees a second. Up to about 10 degrees. Positive rate. You can rotate the aircraft into about 12 to 15 degrees. Positive rate, the gears travelling up. Accelerate the plane to about V2 plus 15 to V2 plus 20. V2 plus 15 is the little white bug. So you're flying pitch for speed. I'm passing through 600 feet, the gears away. 800 feet, thrust mode goes to arm. There's 1,000 feet. The autopilot is in command. And I can now set flaps up by bugging up using the MCP speed. I'm now looking at the airspeed. I've got a small green arrow. The airspeed is increasing. I can select flaps 1. I'm doing that now.
Chrono 40%.
Once it's stabilised, press toga.
Toga.
Call out your FMAs to me then.
N1. Heading select. Toga.
So you're looking for the airspeed to increase. Have a look at the other pilots. Airspeed take, make sure that's increasing. Have a quick look at your ND, make sure that it's increasing on there as well. Through 83
80
knots.
now.
Throttle hold.
Yeah.
Remember, at rotate 2 to 3 degrees a second, you're looking for an initial rotate lift-off attitude of about 10 degrees, no more than that. Once you've got positive rate, gear up, rotate the aeroplane into about 15 degrees. And at this stage, you're not using the flight director for guidance. You're flying pitch for speed, and if you fly it correctly, you'll be on or about that little white airspeed bug. V2 plus 15 to V2 plus 20. Are you there now?
Yeah.
LNAV should have engaged, so you're looking for 1,000 feet now. As soon as you're there, autopilot 1 to command. And you'll see that the aeroplane will effectively engage level change MCP mode. Once you've done that, you can wind the airspeed bug to the flaps up position.
Yeah, flaps up.
And as the airspeed increases, before the flap 1 bug, you can set flap 1 once the airspeed is increasing.
Yeah, flap 1's coming in now.
And as you pass the flap 1 bug, you can select flaps up and pass it through 1,500 feet. You should see N1 enunciated in the thrust mode, and you should get climb 1 set.
Yeah.
So once you pass through the flaps 1 bug, flaps up, and
Flaps
maintain
up.
flaps up. Maintain flaps up now to 3,000 feet on your barometric altimeter. And if I were you, I'd probably wind in whatever you want to wind in, but we'll just say for the sake of argument, flight level 270. And as you've been given a flight level above your transition altitude, you can probably set standard. And once you've done that, and you pass 3,000 feet, and you've engaged LNAV, call for your after takeoff checklist.
Yep, I'll have to take a checklist now.
Okay, after takeoff checklist, air conditioning and pressurisation. Okay, if you look up there very quickly, you should see that on your pressurisation panel, you should see what effectively looks like a clock that says it's about 10 past 12, and those indicators should be in an upside down L. Below that, the cabin rate should be climbing, and there should be some duct pressure.
Yep.
Okay, start switches, you can switch those off.
Yep.
They only remain on if you require anti-ice. The landing gear
Yep.
should be up and off.
Yep.
Your auto brakes should be off.
Yep.
The flap should be up with no lights.
Yep.
And your altimeters should be set to standard, and you should be able to set those 3 times and cross-check.
Correct.
That's your after takeoff checklist complete. The aeroplane's now hopefully climbing away nicely.
Yep.
Okay, although not included in that flow, you can turn your retractable landing lights off. That's the 2 left-hand buttons. You can turn your runway turn-off lights off. And you can put your dinghy cabin crew chime, and you can put your seatbelt sign to auto. Obviously, you'd leave it on if the air was bumpy.
Yep.
Okay, the next thing we're going to do is a check at 10,000 feet. So as you pass through 10,000 feet, call me and we'll do your 10,000 foot check.
Right, we'll pass 10,000 feet.
Okay, 10,000 feet. Have a look up there. Tell me where the needles are on the pressurisation
About
panel. So
20
the inner one.
past 12.
Yep, that sounds about right. So the inner one is your cabin altitude, and the outer one is your differential pressure. So your cabin altitude's climbing, and how's your cabin rate of climb? Should be about 500 feet a minute.
500 feet inch.
And just check your duct pressure now. They should be pointed.
39, 40.
If it were a clock, they'd be pointing at about 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
wouldn't they? And your cabin air temperature should be okay, and that's the little dial at the very top of the pressurisation panel.
22 degrees.
Yep. Okay. You can turn your landing lights off. If you had the logo light on and it was dark, you'd turn that off now. And you can set your bank limit to 30 degrees.
Check.
And the last thing you would do is if you had fuel in the centre pumps and you hadn't switched them on before this point, we won't go into why that would be, but under certain conditions and certain aeroplanes with certain equipment don't have fuel. If they have fuel in the centre tank, they aren't turned on until you're above 10,000 feet. You check the fuel at this point. Okay, you still check the fuel, and you can see that what you're looking for is to see that the fuel is being drawn correctly from both of those tanks to the engines.
Roger.
So there you go, I'm passing 22,000 feet. And as I passed through 20,000 feet, I did exactly the same pressurisation check